You're listening to the Worthy for 30 podcast. I'm your host, Eric Tash. This is the show that helps you find more meaning in your work by inspiring you to give back or find impact, even just a little, every week. Each episode, I sit down with leaders, founders, and change makers who prove that ambition and impact can and should coexist. They share the moments that shape them, the lessons that move them, the why and the how behind their journey, and the small actions that create outsized change. Thanks for being here. Let's get into it.
Welcome back to the Worthy for 30 podcast. I'm your host, Eric Tash. With me today is Frankie Scanlon, the founder of Gustus Vitae. Welcome to the show, Frankie. And before we jump in, I just want to give, manage everybody's expectations and excitement, because this is going to be a great episode, which I hope you all tune in for. If you ever dreamed of launching a food brand, this episode is your reality check in the best way. Frankie Scanlon has lived every version of the CPG roller coaster, and he's here to tell us what actually works when you're building a mission-driven brand from scratch. Frankie, welcome to the show.
Hey, Eric, great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Excellent. And thank you to Boardy.ai. Frankie and I were connected. Not only that, we had a chat before. I visited a friend in Chicago, and Frankie's like, I live in Chicago. I'm like, this is where my friend lives. And he goes, well, I live very close to where your friend lives. And we met up for coffee. So it was a great opportunity to meet you in person, and super excited to just jump in. Again, Gustus Vitae has been around since 2014. Tell us about the business.
Yeah. So we are a gourmet seasoning, salt, spice, cane sugar company. We make everything by hand in small batches. And we started in 2014, kind of on a lark. I was living in Venice Beach at the time, and I'd always liked cooking and food. I'd been making little seasoning gifts for friends and family. Mm-hmm. And there's a farmer's market by me, and I thought maybe we could set up a little booth there. And so literally with just not even a booth, just a tiny little table and some of our seasonings, we started there. And from there, were picked up by Whole Foods. They had a forager program, and they were like, hey, this is cute and cool, and maybe this could be a business. And it's been a ride, man.
It's been a ride, and living in Los Angeles, Venice Beach, to where you are now in Chicago. Again, the business is still operating in East Los Angeles.
That's correct. Yeah. So we're a little unique in kind of small to medium sized CPG in that we do everything ourselves. So for a small to medium-sized company, we are as vertically integrated as you can be. We do all of our sourcing ourselves. We do all of our blending, dehydrating, all of our packing ourselves. We do our own shipping. And so it's all based in East Los Angeles. And I'm there about 1 to 2 weeks out of every month.
That's amazing. And so going back to starting the business, or actually starting the concept, right? And testing the concept at a local farmer's market. One thing that I've come across with founders is when they spot something that's missing or they think is missing from the market, they become obsessed. They're like, wait, this is something that I could do. Can you describe your founder's persona?
Yeah. I think I'm a pretty good listener. Mm-hmm. And there's just a lot of in life, there's just a lot of opportunities, and that whole conceit of, showing up is 90% of it. And so, we were very fortunate to kind of be in the right place at the right time. And as we've grown as a company, first our family and friends told us what they liked and didn't enjoy as much. Mm-hmm. And then the people at the farmer's market bought or didn't buy things, and then Whole Foods customers. And so the way that we've grown and the way that we've been able to provide value to our customers, I think, is really by listening and being responsive to providing a more premium and a more natural product in the seasoning and spice and salt and sugar space than historically has been available.
Gotcha. And then before we go back to that for a second, what's unique about the canisters, right? The person who blends the canister of Gustus Vitae signs it, and there's a number associated, right?
Yeah. So we don't still sign all of them, but there's a unique, certainly, identifier with all of our products. And it is done all by hand. So this isn't some mechanized outfit. Mm-hmm. We don't irradiate, which is a pretty common and in my opinion, kind of weird. In our industry, we use a high heat, high steam process. And then we just go through a lot of individual quality checks along the way. So we're very proud of it is still a farmer's market product in that we know how it's processed and how it's made through every step of the way because we do it.
And then, in terms of, when you first started, again, this is something that you thought, that people would use or need, which is super interesting because, I try to find the through line between the founders that I speak to, and when they first launch product, at least product focused brands, they think of it as this is my taste. And I think my taste is good. Let me share it with the world and then get feedback. And it sounds similar to how you at least initially approached Gustus Vitae as you went to this farmer's market with what you believed people needed, to season their meat, especially, in a warm weather climate where grilling and barbecuing is more prevalent, than where I am in New Jersey right now, where it's close to freezing. And I don't think people are grilling. And then in terms of that feedback process, so from that point to now, like how is feedback generated? And once feedback is generated, maybe you can give a good example of like, wait, to your team, like this is pretty good, this feedback. Let's act on it. So can you give us that process or at least an idea of that process?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, one of our, kind of heroes that we look to is the founders of Ben and Jerry's and how they were able to keep their mission and their values, consistent and current and front and center all the way through their brand. And part of that too was listening to their customers. And I think they were able to do that in a large part because of how engaged they were. We're certainly not on a Ben and Jerry's scale, but I like to think that we share that same listening ethos that they have. So we're very proud to kind of be constantly trying and releasing new different blends. A good example of that would be we have a line called Everything But The. And so that's a series of products that we think kind of exemplify the taste of different cuisines and flavors. So a recent example would be we make an Everything But The fried rice seasoning for whatever reason that hasn't existed before. And that's one of our best selling products that we've made and that we just launched that 6 months ago. So I think there's a lot of opportunities really in any business and certainly in ours where people will just tell you, I wish I had something that made this component of my life easier, or I like the way that this tastes, but this has too much salt or whatever it might be. And we really try to focus on, respecting what people tell us and trying it out. And sometimes it sticks, and that's great. And sometimes it doesn't. And, they go to the flavor graveyard and we try again.
You try again. Again, it's like, what's the worst that can happen, right? Because I imagine if you're doing this yourself, if you're sourcing and blending the product by yourself, the MOQs are pretty low, right? Especially if you're trying to launch new flavors or new seasonings?
Yeah. We are, because we've had those relationships for 10 years and because we're based in California and it's such an incredible breadbasket, we're very fortunate to have, direct access to all sorts of weird, we have a sumac guy, all sorts of weird and wonderful things. And so certainly experimentation and trialing and limited releases are something that we think customers enjoy, and it allows us to respond really quickly to their feedback.
Gotcha. And then just for our edification, in terms of active SKUs, like year-round SKUs, how many active do you currently carry?
About 350 right now, and we'll cycle in and out probably 30 to 50 every year.
Oh, wow. Okay, excellent. And those 30 to 50, again, those limited time offers or those seasonal seasonings, imagine that also makes great news, for at least that loyal consumer, right? And perhaps that new consumer.
Yeah, it's not a washing machine. It's a product that you hopefully go through. They do have a shelf life, but we're not doing our job if you've gotten to the shelf life of your products. We all got to eat, and what we hope is that we provide a convenient, easy, healthy way to make mealtime really shine, and it's something that you want to share with friends and family, and just make it a little more delicious and a little more healthy.
And then in terms of, using your product, right? There are a lot of, as I like to say, aspiring culinary creators on social media. Every time I open up TikTok or Instagram, how are you engaging with those culinary creators with your products?
So we're a little unique in a CPG company. We don't really do any pay to play. We do have some degree of advertising on Amazon, but as we've grown very steadily and, if you forgive the pun, or organically. And it's really been through word of mouth. One of the elements of we have 2 tin sizes. One's a 4 ounce and I'm holding one. One's a 4 ounce, one's an 8 ounce. Right. The 4 ounce ones have little magnets on them, so they'll stick to your fridge. And one of our ideas very early on and still through to now was, how do we get seasonings and spices out of the cabinet and into somewhere where you're seeing them and using them. So that's not to say you have to, make some elaborate meal every night, but, even if you're making takeout pizza, you can zhuzh it up and make it yours. And we really want people to feel empowered and comfortable, in the kitchens. That's a long way of saying, our growth has been by being hopefully a helpful and trusted part of people's lives in their kitchens. And then hopefully they make and share that food with friends and family. And it just has spread that way.
That's super, that insight though that you just mentioned, because I'm thinking about my spice rack and it's like hidden, and the only time we need it is like, my wife's like, Eric, get a paprika or get cayenne pepper or whatever it is, and I'm like, I open it up and it's like dreadful, and it's like not really top of mind. It's more reactive. So how did that insight come about? Because it seems pretty obvious, but not really that obvious, in terms of making the canister so it's much more conspicuous within the kitchen or where you're cooking.
Yeah, we just want to make truly we want to make cooking easier and more accessible for everyone. So we just kind of thought, I think a good contemporary example would be Graza and kind of their squeezable olive oil bottle. It just seems so obvious. Our magnetic tins was a similar idea of how can we make this really a no-brainer, and it's not like doing an archaeological dig, to your point of like, how old is this paprika, or whatever. But this is something that is a handmade product, and it's alive and it's real, and like butter, you see it and you use it, and then it's gone, and then you buy some more. So yeah, it's just kind of been, how can we be more accessible and make people feel more comfortable in the kitchen, basically.
Yeah, because I'm wondering too, just based on my experience, both in food and cooking, it's the protein or whatever I'm cooking, and then the supporting player is the spice. Are you also trying to flip it on its head, like use a spice to inspire you to find a recipe that calls for this particular spice?
No, we're very happy being the plus one at the party. So, we've never, because, advertising hasn't been front and center in what we've done, and because we've grown without outside funding and private equity and all that jazz, how we've done that is by being a really good partner to whatever people enjoy. If you're a vegetarian, we have a whole lot of options that cater to you. If you're managing your sodium, we have stuff that works for you. If you're a carnivore, we got stuff that works for you. And so we really try and be just that additional level upper. I don't know if that's a word in the kitchen. And we wouldn't presume to tell anyone how or what to eat. We just want to make that process a little easier and a little healthier.
Gotcha. And then, just going back for a second to values, because I know we touched upon this when we first spoke, and how the values, again, you've been in business for 11 years plus. You have 350 active SKUs, you cycle in 30 to 50. How do you make, again, not just a product, but where people find out, consume, or buy the product? What are the values that you want to make sure pervade, all those brand touch points?
Yeah. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves. We are a seasoning company. And, we do what we can with what we have. Our values really come through with the product that we make and the people that we're privileged to be able to work with. And we think that comes through in the quality of the product that we produce. So when you have a handmade product that's made with care and with sustainably sourced and thoughtfully secured ingredients, that really does come through when you're cooking. And so we kind of let our product speak for itself. And that is really a reflection of the team that we've built and the community that we are able to participate in. So it's, I think, you can see the quality in the product, and that comes from the team.
Right. And again, the other thing too that really sparks curiosity is, how appreciative and grateful you are for the team, especially the team that's out in East LA. Can you just describe the composition of that team and the type of people that you employ and why you employ those certain people? And it sounds like they've been with the brand for a while as well.
Yeah. We certainly have some team members have been with us basically since it was just me. And then we grew first from shared kitchen spaces to our own space, and really being a part of our local kind of East and West Los Angeles communities has been core to who we are as a company and who our team members are. So, they're reflective of that community, husbands and wives and fathers and mothers and kids. And we really do run a gamut, and being able to participate, fully in that community, whether that's directly through financial support, whether that's through financial support of our employees and furthering their educational aims, whether that's through active donations. We really just try to be good members of our community, and we're really lucky to be surrounded by a lot of businesses that take pride in where they're from and who they are.
And can you, like, just double clicking on like those causes or those, like, what can you give us some semblance of what those causes are?
Yeah. So, we participate in sports teams,
Mm-hmm.
in local sports teams, in schools, in food kitchens. Those would be our primary ones locally, and then nationally, there's larger ones. James Beard Foundation would be a large one that we participate in. God's Love We Deliver would be another nationally based organization that we participate in. We are focused on our community and the local people around us in Los Angeles. And as we've grown to have more national distribution, we're very fortunate to participate in more national causes.
And in terms of like the James Beard Foundation first, like what is that partnership? What does that look like? Like what are they helping not just unlock for perhaps Gustus Vitae, but again, the intended person who's going to see that collaboration or to see that programming? What is the objective or aim?
I wouldn't go so far to say that it's a collaboration. And like I said, we're always the plus one,
right?
And we really want in that instance, or if it's a local baseball team that we're buying the jerseys for,
right?
The local baseball team is what's important, or the underserved community that has chefs of different statuses or backgrounds being supported is what's important in that case. So what we look to do is to support in our small way, and that can be both direct financial contributions as well as product contributions.
And then in terms of the founder who's listening or who will listen to our conversation, who wants to be mission driven, looking back on those past 11 years, plus that you've been leading Gustus Vitae, what are some of like the non-negotiables that you would suggest, to that aspiring entrepreneur who wants, yes, to be, financially solvent and successful at the same time, making that local community impact?
Yeah, I don't really, I don't think it's an either or. I think it's more of a yes and. The people that we're fortunate to work with as team members in our company, alert us to things that are important in their local communities. And as we've grown and become a larger company, we've become aware of something like a James Beard and how valuable the mission they provide is. So our growth has been organic, and I would say that our direct charitable contributions have grown organically as well as we've been alerted to them. Like there's always more that you can do. And just integrating and being aware of what's available, for you is really pretty easy if you listen to your community and you listen to your team members.
Yeah, that concept of there's always more that you can do. Like, well, yeah, I'm just trying to figure out, like, is there a balance, like, or is it better yet, just doubling down on what you're currently supporting? Because to your point, if you constantly think there's more and more and more you can do, like never, like there's no amount, whether it's money or time or contribution, where it's going to be enough. So how do you speak to, again, finding that balance?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a philanthropic element that we can apply to line must go up. And if you think line must go up and you're fortunate, as we have been, to grow sustainably, there's certainly room to incorporate direct financial and then ancillary supporting services in whatever niche that might be. So happily, our niche is food. A lot of places struggle with food security, and us being able to alleviate that in some small way is something that we really value. Some places just, need cash, and we're able to participate in that way too. So like I said, a lot of it just comes from listening and from our local communities and our team members.
Gotcha. And then, you touched upon something that's, a big issue that doesn't get talked about enough. There's loneliness, which we're all experiencing, post-COVID, living in a hybrid remote world, and food insecurity in the United States, which just I can't process and, understand, when we're one of the leading, if not the leading, economies in the world. Can you give us some, again, you're seeing this, from your point of view, from your vantage point, you're on the ground. Can you just, at least at a top line, food insecurity, why is it such a huge issue, or why it should be talked about more?
Yeah. I mean, that's a great question. And to your point, it is a maddening and confusing one, how we can have so much and some people can have so little. We're certainly living in a time when we're seeing the spread of have very much and have very littles has been increasing. And, I wouldn't presume to know all the causes of that, but it's certainly something that we see and we interact with, on a day-to-day basis, frankly. And what has been inspiring and, motivating for us is seeing people directly make contributions and efforts, both, of money and, products, but also of their time to, help people who are in need of it. And what we've learned directly, again, is that a lot of people may not be, chronically food insecure, but, have a hard time, and helping your neighbor, helping your friend, helping a member in your community is a small action that you can make and really has lasting ripple effects as people get back on their feet. And so that's been something that we do, on an individual level and as a company. And it's been really rewarding to see how large of an impact, small contributions can make.
Right. Because I imagine, if you're the person who's, again, not consistently food insecure, but again, has those moments, there might be some guilt or some shame. How do you remove those barriers to allow that person or people to come forward and say, hey, I actually do need help? Or if not, from your experience, maybe from the outside in, what you would suggest.
Yeah. And I wouldn't presume to tell anyone, how to behave or what to do or what their values are.
Sure.
I think removing the idea of anything being a quid pro quo, just the concept that you can do something and that can be it, that a gift can just be a gift. And if it is a quid pro quo, giving feels good, man. It feels good to improve someone's lives in a small and tangible way. And I don't agree with the narrative that there are chronically food insecure people. I think that almost everyone, just needs help. Sometimes I certainly, there have been times in my life when I've struggled with things and people have helped me, and I'm immensely grateful to them. No one's a monolith. And when people need help, it's making it clear that it can just be a gift and you don't expect anything in return can really free up a lot of those, feelings of guilt or shame or not being deserving. And everyone is deserving at the very least of food.
Right. And it doesn't have to be publicized, to your point. It can be just a one-on-one, like, if you want to keep, it's between you and I, right? It's not, no one else needs to know, what's going on here. Like, I want to make sure that you're okay. Which brings me to my next, thought here is, like, again, with founders fundamental or core values. And it seems like, again, the through line with the founders I've spoken with is that, they've had great examples, whether it's in the home, when they're raised, or mentors, which it sounds like you touched on just now, like, I needed help. That could be, a myriad of different issues. Where do you think, the best example of how to be a founder was set for you, or who set that example for you?
I have a family member, Desiree Gruber. She is a titan of public relations, advertising in New York. And seeing her success as a young person and her tenacity was really inspiring for me. I think that in the media, and not on your program, but in the media generally, there's a desire from founders and from the people interviewing them or from the wider public to kind of imagine that it's a lottery ticket and it's this overnight success and it happens. And we're very grateful to see some real successes in the last couple of years. And that's, for us, has been built on, the prior 8 leading up to that. Being able to see her tenacity was really inspiring for me, and that it also doesn't end, unlike a lottery ticket, there isn't, that lump sum payout.
Yeah.
You work really, really, really hard, and then you get to continue working hard. But to be able to grow your team and to support the people around you is immensely gratifying in a way that is impossible to know unless you try.
Right. Unless you try. It's super funny. Like, I had Cass and Mike, my friends who I worked with at Buddy Media, who went on, 2-time exited entrepreneurs. They wrote a book called Shoveling Shit. And Mike very, very, like, bluntly or very candidly says, entrepreneurs love to suffer. And he said it in an endearing way, not like, I'm some sort of like sadist or masochist. Like, no, like, we like shoveling shit. We like solving problems. We like figuring things out. You mentioned a lot of the opposite, the other side of the coin, which is, the fulfillment aspect, helping people, serving people, developing an incredibly remarkable product that's unique, that people use. What's that suffering side? Like, can you give an example of something that was, like, super challenging that in in that moment is like, oh shit, like I got to figure this out. But in hindsight, like, thank goodness I went through that.
Yeah. I think those moments are continuous for me anyway. And I don't know if I would say I enjoy shoveling shit. I would say that I am irrationally optimistic. I think in general, to be an entrepreneur, if it was normal and the universe really wanted it, it would probably already exist. There would already be cutesy magnetic tins. And you just have to believe irrationally that like, no, everyone else is wrong. I'm right. And I'm going to make this thing and then it's going to work. And it's really, really easy to say no and to disagree. And it's very, very hard to get momentum. And so, yeah, there have been times when it's Thursday and we do not have enough money for payroll on Friday. And we have to sell orders that we don't know how we're going to fulfill and write contracts and take out loans that are just going to eat everything. But like, got to make payroll, man. Or saying yes to contracts for, large grocery chains when, you may not have the back end secured. And you get off the phone and you're like, that was great. Now we have a new problem.
Yeah.
And so I would say, irrational optimism has really served us well. And, you just have to back yourself and believe that even though everyone might be saying no, that like you will, and with the help of your team, because no one does this on their own. They'll be your team. Like you will figure it out. Like if you really, really want to, like you will figure it out.
Right. If you have again, you have a North Star of making an incredibly remarkable product that people are going to use, and you're at step 0, you'll figure out those intermediate steps, to get you from 0 to what that end goal is. Right. It's like,
Yeah. And there's a real difference between saying yes to everything and then figuring it out and misrepresenting. And, we've never, and I would say successful entrepreneurs don't misrepresent. They are aspirational. And so we will say yes and then figure it out later, knowing that, because of our team, like we will figure it out. So there have been many, 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 many days and nights when we're all just sitting around like, how are we going to do this? Where are we going to source this from? How are we going to get this done in time? Can you come in Sunday morning at 5 to open up so we can get this packed? And we've always been able to do it. It comes down to the wire often, but that's, that's the joy of it, man.
Yeah, no, I can imagine it's a rush, right? It's like we said yes, and then you like hang up the phone and like shit. Now we got to fulfill.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're not Kellogg, and we're not McCormick, but we have a lot of those conversations, and they're very exciting to have. And we're very, very lucky that we have a team that we've spent more than a decade building trust with. And I trust my team members and I believe that they trust me. And so I know that when we have a challenge that we've always been able to, bind together and meet that challenge.
Also like, the thought also comes into my mind as you're describing these instances. It's like, you're like the head coach, like Ben Johnson, the head coach of the Chicago Bears, famously this past weekend ran into his locker room, like super excited. They won. He ripped off his shirt in the locker room. The players went nuts. Like, would you describe yourself as that head coach where you get everybody riled up and everybody to buy in and believe? And then you have, again, those individual players, again, they believe because you're believing them, they're executing, doing their job, their role. Like, how would you, again, using a sports metaphor, describe yourself and your leadership style?
Yeah. Certainly shirtless fanatic would probably fit. We don't really have a pyramid kind of organization. We're pretty flat, and I give a lot of credit to the people who've been with us for a long time and know their area of the business really well. And so, I wouldn't, I think for me, I've always enjoyed watching that Any Given Sunday speech that Al Pacino does. I can watch that on repeat.
Yep.
But a lot of it is empowering, and our success, I would say, is empowering our employees and our team members to do what they do really well and cheer them on while they do it and get our hands dirty and chip in where it's needed, but really empowering people to make the best decisions, and having small teams that do that has been really instrumental to our success, because people are good and smart and competent and want a chance to thrive in whatever role that they might have. Every role has dignity, from the 18-year-old guy who's just started and it's his first job and he's packing spices. Maybe he has a new way of doing it that we haven't thought of before. And so, a lot of the improvements and some of the breakthroughs and certainly the flavors that we have come from all over different people in our organization.
Right, because everybody has the same set of ears, to to see,
Yeah.
okay, this is what the consumer wants. I always go back to, again, you have a product that you're producing that's consumer facing, that people buy and consume. Yes, again, at least initially you started with your flavor profile, but at the end of the day, what matters most is what does the consumer want? What does the consumer need? So it's amazing that you've empowered your team to, again, listen to the consumer, regardless of their role, to say, hey, Frankie, hey, team, the consumer wants this. Can we make this? Is this possible? X, Y, and Z. So that's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think a suit for Fritos in Cambridge, Mass was going to come up with flaming hot Cheetos. The best ideas, come from everybody, and everyone's opinion has value, and sometimes it sticks, sometimes it doesn't. But I think to ignore what people are saying is crazy, and it's also fun to try. Like maybe blue cheese ice cream is the next thing. Like who knows?
Who knows, right?
Coconut water didn't exist 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of interesting things that I think people are quite often willing to try, and we feel very lucky to be able to play with our food, man. It's pretty cool.
That is very cool. Play with your food, because your parents, growing up, like, don't play with your food, and now, like, as an adult, they're like, actually play with your food. Tell us what you like and don't like.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's amazing. The other question I have, with regards to being a founder, and I've had this debate, is founders are proficient at all roles. Again, I know it's a generalization, proficient at all roles. Like, your marketing person, or if your supply chain person's out for the day, can you proficiently, or at almost, let's say, meets, not like it exceeds, but meets their level, can you do their job?
Yeah, I think I can carry water, for a day.
Mm-hmm.
People have lives, and people are three-dimensional, and
Mm-hmm.
things happen. And because we started with just me, the way that we've grown for better and worse has been through fits and starts.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah. And so we're not Kellogg's, we're not McCormick's.
Right.
We're a much more flat organization. And I personally enjoy that. And I think our team members get value from that as well. I wouldn't say I'd be able to do anyone's job better than them.
Mm-hmm.
And what's really great, and what I found a lot of personal satisfaction is seeing people that might not have a traditional educational background. Maybe they didn't finish high school. Maybe they certainly didn't go to university. Maybe they'd never used a computer before. Mm-hmm. And a couple of years later, they are beyond proficient and excelling at their role in a way that I could not. And it's natural for them. Mm-hmm. That, there is a lot of talent and a lot of people that might not have traditional educational backgrounds, and they just need a vehicle to express that talent.
They need that start, remove the paper ceiling to allow them, to give them that opportunity to shine. Yes, because, at the end of the day, diploma is nice. I'm not saying it's not nice, but at the end of the day, you're being judged and evaluated based on your job, how you're executing, how you're doing, what you set out to do, your roles and responsibilities. So it's part of, it sounds like, as part of your and Gustus Vitae's, core mission and values is, yes, to serve your community and not put a filter on who you're hiring based on, their background, or did they have a formal education or not. It sounds like, again, correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't want to put words in your mouth, can you do the job is really the most important question that needs to be answered.
Even less, man. I would say, do you have the aptitude for, or do you have the attitude rather for this role? We are, this isn't financial trading. This isn't medicine. It's spices and seasonings. And there's nothing we do that's intrinsically hard from a technical perspective. It's hard work, and it's time, and it's being thoughtful, and it's being diligent, and it's being accurate and precise and honest. And if you're those things, then, you will do well. And it's been really gratifying to see those people in our team that have senior roles now. And that's a reflection of who they are as a person, not, what a piece of paper said 10 years ago.
Right. No, that is amazing. It goes back to also, it sounds like the people that are on the team, like working with each other, because it's a flat organization. You mentioned, it's spices, in a beautiful canister that's magnetized. But at the end of the day, you're not curing cancer. Totally understand that. And it's funny as you bring this up. Again, I look at past conversations with people, and one of my former bosses who worked in the beer industry, at the height of, when the Broncos were winning Super Bowls, said to me, beer's great, but the people weren't as great. Then I went into cold remedies, which is boring, you would think, but the people were great. So, like, which which scenario would you choose, or would you want to choose? And I'm like, of course, if it's a quote unquote from the outside a boring product, but the people are great and you're learning every day and you're being pushed, I definitely want to be in that environment. The glitz and glamour of a quote unquote industry, at least this is earlier on in my career, shouldn't be the sole determining factor. It's a nice stop on the resume. Okay. But you're spending a lot of time with these people. You're spending a lot of time in an office. You want to make sure it's enjoyable. Can you to speak to that in terms of, if you're again given that those two distinct scenarios, what you would choose or what you would want someone to choose?
Yeah, I think I really enjoyed your podcast with the founder of Athletic Brewing Company and his kind of conversation about creating an environment where people were free to experiment and trial things, and having those master brewers on hand to create things ad hoc and being empowered to experiment in a smaller way. I think that we try and share the same encouragement of experimentation. We encourage people to speak freely and speak their mind and to disagree. We wouldn't get to where we were where we are rather by mandating anything. And sometimes it's important to set the course, but then you adapt along the way. And so to your point about spending a lot of time in the office, certainly in the year 2025 and beyond, I think the 40-hour work week is something that's in the rearview window, and you got to enjoy it, man. This is life. I believe we only get one shot at it, and to be able to spend that time with people that are engaged and passionate, and sometimes you disagree with, is a real privilege. And we feel very fortunate to be in that place. Like I said at the top, it's a 10-year overnight success, and it's cool to look back on. But to be right now, we're very grateful for our current community and ethos that we have.
Excellent. I think this is a great place to put a pin in this conversation. One of many. One last question, Frankie. Actually, two last questions. One, what are you excited about as you think about 2026 as it relates to Gustus Vitae?
So yeah, new products, man. More is more. This is, we live in America. More is absolutely more. And we're really excited. We grew quite a bit this year. And every year that we grow, it gives us more time to do fishing trips on stuff that we find interesting. And a lot of that comes from our team members and what they come up with. So we've got new flavors, we got new packaging, and we have new retail partners, and hopefully, making ourselves more available to people to try out.
Excellent. And if you're willing to share those retail partners, because I know you're on Amazon. If you go to the Gustus Vitae website, you can buy your product. Where else, again, if someone wants to buy the product, have that experiential.
Cost Plus World Market is our largest traditional brick and mortar partner. We're in a couple thousand specialty and gourmet stores. So if there's a specialty store in your town or your city, go check them out and support them, man. Those are all usually independently run by a mom and a pop who are passionate about food or cutlery or cookware or whatever it might be. And even if you don't see our product, supporting them is a really great way to keep them around. I know I want my little specialty grocer to stay around. They do not carry our product, but support your independent shops.
I love it. And then in terms of like new products, again, more is more, any products that you can share that are coming, in 2026?
Yeah. So we have about 20 products in our Everything But the line. I mentioned fried rice previously. We're going to be expanding in that. We got some birria flavors coming out. We're doing some more stuff with ramen. We have some tonkatsu seasoning. I'm trying to get a pasta water, trying to figure out how to make that powdered. But yeah, we play around in the kitchen, and if you have ideas or anyone else has ideas, we are always open to them and trying them out. And but yeah, we give everything a shot.
Excellent. And then I mentioned the Gustus Vitae website, Amazon. Where else online can people follow you and follow the brand?
Made in USA is a great site. That's all American manufacturers. If you're a distributor, we're on Fair. But I would say Amazon and our website are probably the two best ways. And both of them ship the next day. So if you order today, you might get it tomorrow.
Look at that. And then on social media, I'll include Instagram, right? You're active on? Okay.
Instagram is probably the only one that we're really the most active.
Excellent. Well, Frankie, this has been a great conversation. Really do appreciate sharing your wisdom and experience and values with the Worthy for 30 podcasting community. We'll be in touch soon.
Thank you very much, Eric. I appreciate it.
Let's see. Are we?
That's a wrap on Today's conversation with Frankie Scanlon, the founder of Gustus Vitae. If this episode resonated with you, it's probably because Frankie embodies what many of us want to see in business today: heart, humility, and a relentless commitment to community. Before you go, here are a few practical tips you can put into action right now, inspired by Frankie's journey. 1, listen like your business depends on it, because it does. Frankie built Gustus Vitae by talking directly with customers at a farmer's market. This week, find one way to get closer to your audience or community. Send a survey, DM 5 customers, or pick up the phone. The insights you uncover could be your next product, partnership, or breakthrough. 2, build something with people, not just for them. Frankie's team is empowered to experiment and contribute ideas. And think about one person on your team you can give more ownership to. A small shift in trust could unlock a big moment of innovation. 3, find profit with purpose. Gustus Vitae shows that business can do good and do well at the same time. Identify one local cause, maybe like food insecurity, that aligns with your mission. Even a tiny contribution of time, money, or resources builds momentum and community credibility. 4, stay irrationally optimistic. Frankie reminded us that entrepreneurship isn't linear. Whatever challenge you're juggling right now, give yourself permission to see possibility again. Optimism isn't naive, it's motivation. 5, keep your workplace human. Whether you lead a team of 2 or 20, the environment you create matters. Ask someone on your team what would make their workday just 10% better. Then do it. Culture is built in small, consistent actions. If you love today's episode, share it with a friend who's building something meaningful, or leave a quick review to help more mission-driven leaders find Worthy for 30. Thank you for tuning in.